So prototyping business ideas. Today we're talking not just about prototyping chairs and lamps, or even more interesting things like solar panels or technologies or services for schools. We're talking about prototyping business ideas. Ideas are quite intangible, and only in the moment we start writing them down or drawing them or sharing with others or physically building a boundary object, which is something that can be put in the hands of another person, that person is gonna be able to give us feedback. So prototyping is a way of failing, and is a way of trying to get as many feedback and answers as possible from the world around us, whether that is a market, whether this is a bunch of friends. And, I'm a designer. I do prototyping for a living, which means I do that, and I try to engineer the way I prototype at different levels, whether it's more intangible service, whether it's a physical product, whether it's a digital application. But we all prototype. Every time we cook for dinner and we try a new recipe and we don't have the right ingredient and we test something else, we're prototyping. Every time we plan for a trip or take a different route with our bike on our way to work, we're kind of prototyping something. So prototyping, it's not something, it sounds like scary and difficult, but it's something we all do every day, many times a day. We also prototype relationships. When you say we're dating, you're really prototyping relationship there. As Federico already introduced me, I'm a designer. I like to call myself a problem solver. Sometimes I'm a trouble banker. When I work with big corporates where everything is sort of waterfall and logical, I try to bring in some sort of lateral divergent thinking. I did wrote a book about small businesses using service design, and Federico is right. You don't need to be a big business to apply service design, but you need to read Italian if you want to read my book, because it's not in English yet. So it's a book that was published by UX University, which is an editor in Rome, specialized in user-centered design innovation. So it was published in Italian. Maybe soon, let's see. It went out in December 2020. So I hope, let's see how it goes the first year, and then we'll consider if translating or not in English. I run a small business called Common Ground. It's a design studio based in Bologna. We do work with public sector organizations and charities as well, but we do a lot of work with the big corps as well. And that goes from banking to consultancy, to training at different levels, even to governance and redesigning the organization, the way people work together to achieve what they need to do. I work at the University of Bologna because I'm an advanced with the advanced design unit, which is a specialist degree specializing in product and service design. And I'm also a member of Architecta, which is the Italian Society of Information Architecture. Said so, a lot of people call me for very fancy stuff. At the moment, for example, we're working for Technogym, which is a wellness company based here in Italy, in Cesena. And we're gonna go next week to do a couple of design thinking workshops. And it's interesting talking about design thinking as a way of transferring our design capability and capacity to people who are not designers. It's like doing engineering thinking. You do a workshop and you think like an engineer. Yes, now thinking as a designer in the same way as thinking as an astronaut or thinking as an engineer or thinking like a doctor is something we can all think like a different person, but doing design and actually apply this this sophisticated set of rules, techniques, methods. It's not something easy. I call design thinking a new form of design consultancy, which is not limited to sprints and workshops. Actually, as you can see here in the cartoon, there's a little ghost goes like boo, 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 and the guy's not scared. And it's like, I'm selling design thinking as a workshop. Ah, you're still there. Design thinking is not just corporate entertainment. We don't go in companies and stick post-its to the wall and bring Legos in. We do bring Legos in and play with other stuff. We try to blend the sort of serious playfulness that the innovation design world brings with it. And we blend it with sort of strategic business insights. We're trying to make sense, because if we design better products, services, and experiences, if we turn business ideas into something that people can experience, then we're doing good business. And I think that there is a very good synergy between these two worlds, although they're quite different. I also have a lot of friends that do marketing, and they say marketing is a creative strategy to sell something in the best possible way. And I say, yeah, design is quite similar. It's a creative strategy to make something in the best possible way. And those two things, the making and the selling, they go hand in hand when we talk about business. Now, prototyping, as I say, is something we probably do every day, more times a day. There are people that are really stubborn on prototyping. Leonardo da Vinci was one, but also the Wright brothers were actually quite stubborn on prototyping. And between 1899 and 1905, they really produced an enormous amount of flying machines in order to prototype the first device vehicle, the first airplane. Now, when you prototype an airplane, we're not talking about prototyping a chair or prototyping something and see if the market may like or not. You're prototyping something that you need to fly into, so you may die if you don't prototype it right. And they actually, they fell off many times of their machine. So embracing failure and not giving up and try and test it and try and test, iterating your idea, be stubborn on it. It means fail 1,000 times, succeed one, but that's what you're trying to do. So you're trying to fail earlier and anticipating all the mistakes you can make in order to get to the big dream, which is this dream of flying. Of course, this is a metaphor, but with many business ideas, sometimes we fail once, twice, three times, and then we give up. Maybe we haven't tried hard enough. Maybe we haven't prototyped it right. In order to prototyping, we don't just need visual skills or maker skills. Prototyping a business idea sometimes is as easy as asking around if people will buy into a certain concept. If we prototype a value proposition, if we prototype a new policy, a new cancellation policy for our low-cost airline service, we're not just prototyping something physical. We also go into prototyping different aspects. It's like prototyping a theater play. In a theater play, physically on stage, you can see the scenography, which is the physical setting where the screenplay is going to happen. So you can prototype the wallpaper, you can prototype the lighting, you can prototype the distribution of objects on stage, and then we'll change the way the play will actually be played. You can prototype the script and just go and change the wording and change the order of how things happen. You can prototype the actors and the costumes and their roles, or you can even prototype the props, the physical objects. It's going to have a skull and say to be or not to be. It's going to have a crown that defines a role. It's going to have a sword. So the way we prototype business ideas is really prototyping different aspects of it. And talking about businesses, whether there are ongoing businesses, whether there are small businesses, or whether there are startups, we talk about minimum viable products, we talk about proof of concepts, and then we talk about prototyping. And all these aspects, it seems like to be overlapping terminologies. When we talk about testing an idea, it's what are we testing? Are we testing the look and feel? Are we testing if it works physically or technologically, or are we testing the value proposition, is this go a potential future in our economy? And Nesta, which is a UK-based charity, but also in Italy, they started 2 years ago to develop knowledge. They're a bit of a think tank, I will say, an innovation think tank. They've been working a lot on social innovation, but they also release a set of papers where they're talking about prototyping or piloting, proof of concept or minimum viable products. What is this method about? What is the different? What is the stage of development of an idea when we need to apply any of these set of techniques or approaches? If we have a hunch of an assumption, maybe we want to go with a POC, a proof of concept, and maybe we work in a lab studio environment. Maybe we want to prototype and test with a bunch of users. And maybe we want to move into the real world and test the core of a solution and see if it's got market potential. We want to go with an MVP, a minimum viable product. These are all, we're talking about the same world, the same context. as Alberto Savoia, which was one of the first engineers at Google. He published this book, which maybe some of you may know. It's called The Write It, and it's why so many ideas fails and how you make sure you succeed. In this book, he's not talking about prototyping, but about pretotyping with the E. It's not mistake. He talks about pretotyping. Pretotyping is even before prototyping. It's even before you build something physical and put it in the hands of people. It's really trying to understand. And here there is a little example you see on the right hand side, where you see one of the first PDA device, and it was using a chopsticks as a pen to demonstrate the functionality of something to a potential investor. So it wasn't even developing the technology to prove that it was right, but it was still prototyping a physical interaction. If we think about the gestures we do every day with our fingers, the zooming, the pinching, the scrolling, the swiping, these gestures about 8 years ago, they were not existing. So a bunch of designers and technical people supported by business people, they invented, they created a set of gestures that today we think are normal. So they prototyped behaviors and gestures, and that's what is most important. We're not just prototyping products, services, and experiences. What Alberto Savoia says in his book, with a set of tools and techniques, he says that companies without prototyping, they try fewer number of ideas on the market, and they see these ideas failing over time. So they prototype 5 ideas, and after 2 years, none of these actually succeeded, or maybe one succeeded. With prototyping, maybe you start prototyping 15 or 20 ideas, and maybe some of them will fail fast, but that's the point. Fail earlier to succeed sooner. So you increase your rate of success by increasing the number of ideas you want to prototype. And you need to do that fast with low budget. A colleague of mine usually say something which is love shitty first drafts. Love your shitty first ideas, which is just the very early representation of your idea. And don't be afraid to put it out there and share it. Going back to the workshop I'm running next week with Technogym, which does gym equipments and stuff like that, the founder is a very bright, actually he's an industrial designer himself, but is also a great entrepreneur and a great motivational speaker. Over time, because when he started the company, he started the company when I was born in 1983. So he's got far more experience than I do. But more recently, I was speaking with some of the colleagues, say, we don't go out to the market to test products that are not completely finished. And I say, what's the point then to go and test it? I mean, prototyping is going with unfinished, rough concepts to people and trying to get them to build it. It's easier with digital stuff because you can go online with something in beta and getting a lot of feedbacks from the World Wide Web and improving and increasing in an incremental way. But when you're making pens, or if you're making glasses or bottles, you need to physically produce them. So maybe better you get it right earlier. I want to also, to keep quite light, I want to tell you a story. Now, this story, it's about me every day. I got a 1-year-old baby, and we got one of these stocket design sort of high chair for babies. Actually, mine is black. But I do have a Dyson Cyclone V10. Every time my son's got breakfast or eats anything, it's a mess all around. But I'm very proud of this sophisticated vacuum cleaner, which I take it and I use it, and I feel very proud because I'm a designer myself. And so this is my daily gesture. I do more times a day. But if I go back to when I was a student, an industrial design student in London, I met James Dyson, who's also another industrial designer, also an entrepreneur, was really obsessed with prototyping. Every vacuum cleaner, every product, anything is doing, anything is still producing in his company. He forces, I had a few friends that did an internship at Dyson. They were like scared almost by the attention to details, because every single piece of that device needs to be prototyped separately. And then it was really a restless prototyping innovation lab. And that's how I really imagine when I was studying design. I was imagining James Dyson not to be with a suit and, being the great entrepreneur. So I was imagining him surrounded by objects and tools and prototyping and enjoying this act of testing and experimenting and learning from his failure and trying again, and not being afraid to say, oh, look, we got a better invention now. We got these electronic vacuum cleaners. We're going to dismiss all the other products we've done in the past years. So it's also brave from a marketing and industry perspective. And of course, a great leadership example for the younger generations, which these are Dyson toys. But why I'm telling you this story, because sometimes we go, a lady who comes home to help us with the cleaning, and I offer my super powerful Dyson Cyclone 10 and say, oh, this is the best, a very expensive vacuum cleaner in the market. And she was like, no, I got mine. I was like, why? That doesn't work for me. She's a professional cleaner and she doesn't want my super Dyson. And I was like, why do you use that sort of little thing? She was like, because this has got cable, it doesn't go low on power, I need to use around the house, it stands up, so I don't need to lean against the wall and stuff all the time. So I was like, okay, this is a lesson learned. I go very fancy about my super Dyson, but actually professional cleaners won't use it. And my mom, she's the worst, because every time I give my super vacuum cleaner, she's like, oh, no, I do with broom and dustpan. That's what I do. Why I'm telling you this is gonna come back in hand, because always in London, different time, a few years later, design and business start merging in my professional careers. And at another meeting, I was in an conference. We were testing about, it was startups, social enterprises, and I met a very young Alexander Osterwalder, who's the author of prototyping business model generation, where he's talking about prototyping business models. And was the first time I heard, but he was still prototyping during the conference, the business model canvas, which is potentially a tool that most of you know or have stumbled upon during workshops or trainings. Years later, he created a company called Strategizers. What I learned from Alexander, he was very curious. He's an economist. Now today we would say he's a consultant or an entrepreneur, but he had a very economical sort of background. And he had a vision, he had a dream. He said, I want to take this world of business planning and business model with all these complicated interconnected elements to people